Hello, everyone, and welcome to the US Antarctic Program Data Center webinar. Thanks for tuning in today. My name is Frank Nietzsche. I'm a research scientist at the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory and also the data manager for the Antarctic Program Data Center here at Lamont. The goal for this webinar today is mainly to give you an introduction on the main features and services that the USAP DC provides. And I'm going to start basically with a little background about what USAP DC is, and then go a little more detail into how you can submit and search data sets at the repository that we run here at USAP DC, and then also talk a little bit about how you can register projects with the Antarctic, or how you can use our services to register your projects in the world with the Antarctic Master Directory. And in the end, I will talk a little bit about additional tools that the AIDA Consortium provides that can help Antarctic and Southern Ocean researchers to find data or to work with different data sets. So we will also record the webinar and post it on the website later, so you can share it with colleagues and friends who might not be able to attend today. And I expect the whole webinar, depending on the questions, maybe to last somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes. And the best is probably while I'm talking to explaining things that you mute your microphones and then maybe type the questions or comments you have in the little chat window at the bottom if possible. Good to get started with what is the US Antarctic Program Data Center. So we are a data center funded by NSF, so the Antarctic Program, and we're currently hosted here at the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory as part of the AIDA group, the Integrated Earth Data Alliance, which is a broader NSF-funded data facility here at Lamont. To give you a little, most of the information that I'm talking about, you also find on our webpage, www.usapdc.org, where you can find all the links and informations. And I'm going to demo this webpage in a moment. But before, I just want to give you a little bit of background for the data center. So you're probably aware that NSF has a general policy now for several years that all data sets created through NSF awards or funded by NSF must be deposited in a long-lived public accessible archive. And when the Polar program several years back was adopting and enforcing this policy, they found there were a lot of data center out there for the bulk of the data, but there were also quite a few PIs that had problems finding an appropriate data center for their data. So, and to provide an opportunity for every PI to submit the data to a long-lived repository, they created basically this USAP data center. And as a result, if you look through our data holdings, you find that we have a really broad range of data from astronomical radio probe measurements to, albatross flight paths, penguin counts, sediment cores, and a lot of glaciology data. So we have the whole range of Antarctic programs or data related to those programs. Specifically, in addition to the general NSF data policy, the Antarctic program has a second requirement that you might be aware of, that the program requires all the PIs to submit the metadata information about their datasets and awards to the Antarctic Master Directory, which is a catalog service run by NASA. And the second requirement is mostly related to the Antarctic Treaty, where the SCA, the Scientific Committee for Antarctic Research, decided to have one main catalog that should provide an overview of all the science or data that have been collected in Antarctica, and they choose to use the Antarctic Master Directory for this. And I'm going to go into a little more detail later in the webinar about the Antarctic Master Directory. So in response to these two requirements that the Polar Program has, we have different services at the USAP data center. So the first set is that we basically act as a repository for NSF-funded data sets, mainly from the Antarctic program. We provide assistance with data set publications, DOIs, and act as a long-term archive for these data sets. And also then we have several tools that help people discover the data sets or search for data sets that we host ourselves in our repository. The second part is that we have the services to help PIs to register the projects and awards with the Antarctic Master Directory. So sometimes this get a little confused as we have these two different things. We're not hosting all Antarctic data sets. We only have the subsets that we have in our repository, but we're providing the service for all other data sets to create these entries in the Antarctic Master Directory. And in addition to those main services, we're also working with the other either partners and to assure that their main tools also have a component that helps Antarctic researchers as well. And they're going to demonstrate some of those in a while. Good. So the first thing what I want to do, I'm going to switch now to demo of the web page. This is where we find most of the information there is. And so if you look into www.usapdc.org, this is what you get. And you hit in the main page, you will find, a shortcut to contribute data or a shortcut to search data. And most of the information that I give you today, you can also get through the different information provided in the menu here as well. So I'm going to start with the first step, that you have a data set and you want to submit it to our repository. So if you click on contribute data, you could also go to contribute. And the menu, you get a little choice here to either, it's basically a two-step process. First, you can deposit your data set with our repository. And the second step would be to register your project. We have these two steps together because often the PIs come at the end of their award time. They want to do both steps together. They want to submit the data sets to a repository and then register the project with the Antarctic Master Directory. And it usually is a better way to do this in the order. First, deposit your data set. So you don't have deposit your data set as the USAP DC. There's a whole range of other repositories available. We provide a list of options here. This is certainly not comprehensive. There's others. And if you know of any other data center that should go on this list, just let us know. So like BICO, DEMO, GeneBank, MGDS. There are other options where people can submit their data to. But if you decide to contribute your data to our data center, then to USAP DC, you can just hit deposit here. And the first thing is we're going to ask you to sign in and either use the a Google ID if you have, or ORC ID. This is a general research identifier that now many of the publishers require as well. So if you click on this, you can use mine account here. So this will, once you signed in, this will get you to a web form that we have set up to collect a lot of the information that we need to actually put the data, ingest the data into our database. So we want to contact email in case we have any questions, data set title, who are the authors of the data set, an abstract that describes the data set a little more detailed than the title. In general, our data sets that are submitted to us are linked to some NSF awards. So we have a list of awards from the Antarctic program. Here you can just choose one. I just choose a random one linked to. If you have any publications already in press or out there that kind of use the data or link to the data sets, you can add those publications here and add multiple if you want. And then additional, you can add, as identifiers like a cruise ID, flight number, field camp number here that can be used to search for the data as well. For larger projects with multiple awards, many years, we can also set up a special keyword in for this project. For example, certain ice core stations or the Larissa program, or bigger program, multiple awards that have several data sets, and that having such a keyword will help identifying these data sets from these programs later. Besides these specific keywords, if you have other keywords describing the data, like symmetry, CDD, whatever, radiocarbon dates. So these kind of keywords can be anything you can think of that might be useful for finding the data. Can go and you just type in this box here, and then we can. We also would like you to have spatial boundary of the data sets if exists, and temporal boundaries, maybe just the beginning and the end of the project in here. And then if you have any keywords that link to a certain area, like Pine Island Bay, Ross Sea, Transantarctic Mountains, you can use add those here. So this first page basically is information that we use to ingest the data set into the database, and that can we offer this also usually as search options for the data sets. On the second page, we have a few more questions more specifically about the data. So this is information about what instruments have been used, if there were certain acquisition procedures used, like how was the data acquired, collected, has there been any processing done to the data, and also a description of the data content. Sometimes it might be just one file, it might be very obvious, then you don't really need to have a detailed description here, but we have a few data sets that are like a couple hundred files. They have a certain structure to them, so having this information in here is very useful. And also if you have any additional information about units or acronyms that are not already described in the files, themselves, for example, in an Excel table or so, then it would be good to have this information here. And then if there's any issues in the data sets, for example, that they're uncalibrated data or they have gaps in time measurement or certain problems, it would be good to have those information listed here. You can think of this as being, information that if you downloaded data from somewhere, there's certain information you would like to see for this data. So you can, this kind of information should go here as well into these fields. And if you have any other comments about the submission that might help us processing the data, you can make those here. And once you've filled those out, you can just hit browse and select one or many files to upload those data. We have a kind of a restriction that's not really firm limit of around 250 megabytes. If you have really, the main reason is if you have really large data sets, and we have a few that are a couple gigabytes or even a terabyte large. So it's not really feasible to upload those to the web interface. So if someone has these kind of large data sets, and they should contact us and rearrange either an FTP upload or even for extreme large data sets, a shipment of a hard drive to get this data to us. So if you have filled out all the different segments, you just have to agree that we post this data and we create a DOI to make it public available, and then you can submit those. We do also have the option here that if you suddenly find, oh, my data are not quite ready yet to submit, that you can save the session, fix your data, and then log in at a later point. And then there's an option to, after you log in, to restore a saved section. And we're using the login at the beginning to kind of tie sessions to individual scientists as well to enable this function. Well, if you're happy with your submission, you have your data file, you submit, hit the submit button, then we're going to process the data. We try to be really quick with it in a day or a couple days, and then we're going to post this on our web page. And this will be a typical data set. That's one that we got recently from John Anderson's group. So if you browse for data, you'll find a description here on the web for each of our data sets. So we have a map showing the extent. So this is a data set that's basically sediment cores from the Ross Sea. So it's a quite wide extent. And you have some options in this map view to change the background map if you like, or maybe to load cruise tracks. In this case, maybe not the easiest, some limited option, but the main purpose is here to show the user basically where the data set is located. For every data set that we provide or we receive, we provide a DOI, a digital object identifier. That's a number that you probably know from publications. Most of the journals now provide for each paper a DOI, but you can also provide those DOIs for data sets. And the advantage is that they're becoming citable. There's an official citation linked to the DOI, and we create those automatically based out of the information that is provided with the submission. And DOI then is something you can share in a publication or other people can use in a publication. And once somebody clicks on the DOI, they're going to be referred back to this data set page. The other elements are the same, more or less the same fields from the submission, like the title, there's the abstract, date created, who are the authors, spatial, temporal extent. We do have a link to an NSF award that's linked to this, so people can find about the NSF award, go to the award page as well. And have a list of the references that are linked to this data set so far. And then we have the actual data file and all the files, if there's multiple ones here, and all the second page information about the data sets we combine and into a README text document, and people load and find all this additional information about how data were acquired, processed, and what the data structure is. All this additional information goes into here. So this would be a typical data page. I think a lot of people are interested in how to find data sets. So let's go. There are different ways. So one is actually on our homepage. We have map with all the data sets that have location information that we have in our repository at USAP DC, and the different colors of these dots represent the different programs. So I think green is earth science, dark red is glaciology, beige is life science groups, and we're only plotting the center point of the area extent, but if you click of any points here, you get a little box that shows the actual extent. And I think if you click here, it was the Anderson data set I showed earlier. And from each of these points, you can get directly to the data set page. You can also use this select tool here, create draw a box to a certain area, and then hit search. So this will provide a list of all the data sets in this box, or that's attached into this box. So this is a lot of different ice core data here from various ice cores, Vostok and others in this case. We have also a text search option. So if you, or maybe go back, if you go to the search button here, or you go to search, data search, it's the same, gets you to this text interface search, and this allows you to either, again, use a map search, the same that you saw on the outer page, or you can search by this large science project. So if you want everything, all the data that we have related to the Taylor Ice Dome data, you would just select those, hit search, and get all the data sets listed that we have for Taylor Ice Dome. Then there's a award in NSF funding, and once you have selected one data set here, all the other fields will filter for those. So these are all the awards that are linked to the Taylor Ice Dome data that we have here, or they're all funded by the Antarctic Glaciology program. But to get rid of it, you can reset this. Use the reset button up here, and then we see all the awards that we have data for, all the programs that we have data for. While those probably more interested for program managers to look at, we have a free title search option where you can just start typing the data like carbon, and then it will list all the data sets that have carbon in the title, for example. Or you can search for person here, all the people who have linked to some data sets that we have. Over here again, you can just start typing. So if I'm typing Anderson for just Anderson, then we get and search for it, we get back to the data set that I showed earlier. Yeah, so that's basically the main ways how you can identify the data sets that we have in our repository. So it doesn't really go like search data outside our repository. So that was the first part, being basically in a repository. You can contribute data and you can search for data that we have. The second part is services that we have to assist people working with the Antarctic Master Directory. So basically, the Antarctic Master Directory is a subset of the Global Change Master Directory, and it's a catalog that has a whole list of metadata from data sets and projects, not only from the US, but from other countries that do research in Antarctica as well. I think at the moment there are like over 9,000 data sets in there, of which roughly 3,000 are from the US. And you have some search options in the Antarctic Master Directory where you can browse down by certain keywords and refine by keywords and subsets of the data. You can drill down ocean bathymetry and so on. So you end up in the end, until you get to a point where you get a list of data sets. So they're allowing this drill down by keywords. I said earlier, NSF requires people to submit the data to the Antarctic Master Directory if they were funded by the Antarctic program. And creating these records could be a little tedious sometimes. So we have the service also to help people to create those records in the Antarctic Master Directory. And NSF at the moment likes to have one record per award per project. And to do this, to make it relatively easy, you can go to the project registration, which is another web form that we have, and relatively straightforward. You select the award for which you want to, of the project, the award number of the project you want to register, and we will pre-fill this web form with the information we get from your NSF award directory. And then the PI should go through, provide some other more details, the email, maybe additional PIs, maybe update the date if it was extended from what's shown in the NSF award page. And then we capture the original abstract from the NSF page, but it would be useful if you have a newer version of an abstract or text that better describes what you actually did in the project to update the abstract. And then there's choices to provide these keywords that basically the AMD uses first for location descriptions, which are for the Antarctic continent quite limited. We have to pre-filter those to those that are common for Antarctica, but they are limited, and we're working with AMD maybe to get a few better descriptors in here. So, but you could, Antarctica, Southern Ocean, Russia, you can select as many as you think are useful for your project to choose, and then the same for different data types or science keywords. You can select those. Again, we have a list, and you go to cryosphere, ice sheets, etc. You can again select whatever you think. Well, ocean, there's ocean as well, ocean science. So just picking some randomly, but you can select a whole bunch, and then again add the bounding box of your spatial extent. And then importantly, we want to link the data sets to this record. So you can either say that you have submitted data set to us, to USAP DC, then we know which data sets these are, and then we'll use those. Or if you have submitted data sets to a different repository, just add the name of the repository and the link to the data set in here. In some cases, people want to create this entry without having data yet. So just let us know by typing this here, and we can create it without a data entry. And then if you have any other comments, like would like to see additional keywords or anything else you want to let us know, use this comment box. And then when you submit this registration form, we will process this and create the record for the Antarctic Master Directory and submit it to the Antarctic Master Directory. But then usually it's going to take a couple of days before it goes live, because then there is the Antarctic Master Directory is run by NASA, and they have their own data managers that they're going to review this record and check it before it actually goes live. So it can take a couple of days. I just mentioned it because we had sometimes PIs creating this at the last day when the report was due, and then they get a little surprised that they have to wait a few days before it goes live. And so once it's live, you can see it in the Antarctic Master Directory. We do have also a link to the data set from our page if it's hosted in our data center. Just to give you an idea how a record looks in the Antarctic Master Directory. So there's a title, the abstract, which is often just the NSF abstract. Then there are links to the data set. So in this case, we have a link to a data set in our database, the John Anderson data set I showed earlier, but there's also a link to a different data set. There was a data set from the cruise that are deposited at the MGDS, the Marine Geoscience Data Center at Lamont. There could be multiple other data linked to it as well. And then there's a list of location keywords, science keywords, and other keywords that are used or available for AMD to drive the searches at the Antarctic Master Directory. We also offer under search a little browser here, but these are only for where we have like a list of basically AMD rockets that we created or manage here, the AMD. So it's not a complete AMD record, just a subset of it, but you can, look at those records, search for those in this, what we call diff browser. That diff is the record identifier that the AMD uses. And you can see that some of them have data sets at USAP DC, but we have also created this AMD entries for other projects, which, for example, has some code at GitHub or data at BCO-Demo or GeneBank or MGDS. So there can be multiple. Each of these AMD records can have links to multiple data sets, and they can be at different repositories. Good. This is what I wanted to show you about the main services that we have. Basically, being a repository and having these services to help with the AMD. At the end, I want to go over some other EDA resources. You can find those again from the menu down here that we have, resources that we have at AIDA that also help with different Antarctic data. So one is a polar ship data center or data set. So that's part of the Marine Geoscience data system. We have a special portal for all the data sets or data collected directly by the Google and Palmer. And you can have a special portal here for those data, and you can have either use a map browser where you can click on a certain cruise and get information and get to a cruise page. Here, that's an older one. It's not so many data points. Or you can list the data by ship, for example, Palmer, by expedition, to get a list of all the NB Palmer expeditions, and they're listed alphabetically, but you can also sort them by date as well. And then you get, for each of those, there's a little map that shows where the cruise took place and which data sets have been collected at this cruise. And let's take, I don't know if we take a more recent one. To get to the data, if you click on it, you get to a data page, and you see what kind of data sets they have collected. There's mostly the underway data, plus some extra information. There's some information about the devices that have been used. If there have been already publications, again, we can link the publications to this cruise. People on the cruise, often it's just a chief scientist, sometimes more additional documents, for example, cruise reports, technical documents can be linked as well. And sometimes we have also links to the AMD record or to other data center sets from this. Also get to the map views here as well for this cruise. So if you're interested in oceanographic data in the Antarctic for the Palmer and the Gould cruises, so this is a really good tool or resource to go to. Another resource we have is called this GMRT map tool. So it's part of either the GMRT stands for Global Multi-Resolution Topography, which is a kind of a topography data set that we created here at AIDA, which is the core of it is multi-beam data that we've collected. We have a lot of multi-beam data for some parts of the Antarctic Ocean here, and we combine those multi-beam data with other topographic data sets like BandMap, IPSO, and GAPCO in the background to make a seamless grid. And you can use this tool to select a certain area and create a grid that's then saved as you can select a resolution here. There are different options, and then you can save this grid as a GeoTIFF file and then load it in your own GIS software or other data software if you want to use those. So that's a very useful tool if you want to work or need a bathymetry grid, topographic grid for your own data center to use with. Another tool that you can use if you don't have your own GIS, you want to more easy access is a GeoMap app. Some of you might heard about it or might even be familiar with it. So GeoMap app is a Java-based program that's available for Windows, Mac, and Unix systems. You have to download and install on your computer, but it runs on basically every platform. And it's somewhere between a GIS and a data browser. So if I bring this up here, so we have different views, global Mercator view, and then views for each pole. So if you use the Antarctic view, this is what you start with, and it has the same GMRT global multi-resolution topography based data set that you've seen in the map tool. And so you can zoom in and out to find out resolution and detail. And if you're in a certain area, and the standard view is just image tiles, but if you go and open the actual grid data, then you can see now up here, if I move the cursor, the actual depths, and you can draw profiles over the data center that give you, like, for example, elevation profiles in the various forms. So linked to the data set. So it's a really neat tool to explore those data. The main power comes from the fact there's literally hundreds of different data sets preloaded and linked through GeoMap app. So you can add additional data layers. Like, for example, cryosphere. If you're interested in sea ice concentrations in February, so we have a data set average sea ice concentrations in February. That's been loaded, so it can be plotted on top of the data set here, and you can even search for the data center. If you click, you have a browser. So if you look for ice velocity, then it will shorten this a little bit and gives you only the ice sheet. Maybe it doesn't, but you get the ice velocity data center for. We know you can overlay those as well. All the data are in the cloud, so it downloads the data, which depends on the condition. So it doesn't really come with the data integrated. And so now it downloads the data, and you see the ice flow velocities overlaying here. And you get for each of the grids that you download, you can modify the color scale if you like. And you also, it comes with a layer manager where you can turn certain layers on and off, or you can make them transparent. So a very quick way to load different data sets together and browse them and get a quick overview or make a quick map. It has, in addition to the data layers, we have also specific portals for seismic data, multi-beam, ocean drilling. And we have also one, I'm just going to show one example, radar data from, let's zoom out a little, turn those off. Radar data for, we have Lake Vostok and AGAP. So for Lake Vostok, for example, you get all the airborne radar flight lines around Lake Vostok, and you can just pick a line, and then these portals come with special functionality. So for this radar portal, we have a image viewer for radar data, which will show the radargram down here, and you can zoom in and look at the radar data in more detail. For example, here, see the extent of Lake Vostok where it's fresh, and you can overlay other data on top of those, similar to a GIS. In addition to the data that we already have preloaded, you can also bring in your own data, either as from a web service, or you have a grid in various forms, shapefile or ASCII table or Excel spreadsheet. You can bring in your data and combine those with the data we already have in GeoMap app. So it's a very powerful tool, and I'm only scratching the surface here with GeoMap app. There's a lot of help functions available through the web page that get you started, including very good video tutorials as well. Other resources, running a little bit short on time. So we have other data browsers, an AIDA data browser, GeoPortal. That's a different way to find data. And for PIs who want to create a new proposal, we also have a service here to create a data management plan that, again, if you log in here, we get to a site and you can create a new data management plan for your proposal. It basically guides you to or ask for different information that should be included in the data management plan, and then provide some guidance what to include and how to include it, and then you can be more specific for all the different data products that you think you might get from your proposal. And in the end, it will check it for completion and create a PDF that you can just submit with your proposals. And good with that. I think there was a quick overview about the functionalities that we have at USAP DC. Get rid of this. And so I'm happy to entertain any more questions that you have. I hope you get a better idea now what you can do with USAP DC. We are always open for suggestions of how we can improve the web page or what other data people like to see, either as part of USAP DC or part of the other tools that we have, for example, GeoMap app. I don't know, are there any questions that people have right away? I don't see anything in the checkbox right now. We are recording this and make it available afterwards. And if people have any questions about this USAP DC data center, about specific for your data set or other related questions, feel free to email us at info@usapdc.org, or you can also email me directly as well, fniche@leo.columbia.edu. Good. If there's no immediate questions, I'd like to thank everybody again for for listening to the webinar, and I hope it was useful to everybody, and that you will be able to submit your data in the future to USAP DC. And with that, thank you very much again, and finishing the webinar. All right, thanks everybody.